Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Manga chapter review. This one's going to be for chapter 47, which is called Predestined Fate. So this is another really strong chapter, continuing on our big explanation of the karma mark, the Otsutsuki, and specifically in this chapter, the tease from last chapter at the end was how to kill an Otsutsuki, given that they can seemingly reincarnate at will by using the karma mark as a way to constantly create new vessels to be reborn in. How do you actually defeat someone who can just implant that in anyone and be reborn a little bit later? So that's what we get into very heavily here, and it's a really interesting explanation. And they also add on to that something that I think everyone's been waiting for, the reveal of Kashin Koji's identity. We see him without the mask and another character confirming basically who, or in this case, sort of what he is. And they leave that as the sort of cliffhanger ending of like, okay, here's a basic explanation of who he is. It's the reveal we wanted. Now we sort of need the explanation for how this sort of came about, with the idea of it is a clone of Jiraiya. How did that come about? Very interesting. But this chapter, I think, is best explained as we go through it. There's a lot of very sort of dense, complicated, in a way technical explanation that comes into play here, because Boruto's case and Kawaki's case are very different. So that, like, the situation we're in here is so kind of odd, of like Boruto, Kawaki, and then Jigen are three sort of karma mark users, or the people who have karma marks, are all different cases in ways. And how do we actually explain it? That was a lot of the sort of speculation from last month's chapter, and I think that's why it's so complicated here, is to explain a lot of the questions that we had from the last one. But let's get into it here. So we open up with the idea of these natural flames, the eternal flames from this kind of flaming mountain. These can't be absorbed by karma mark because they're not made of chakra. These are the sort of finishing blow seemingly to this fight. And we just reference again, they can't be absorbed with karma because they weren't created using chakra. He can't absorb these. But the flames do begin to get smaller, and everyone's like, wait, you said he couldn't absorb them, but he is. What's going on? Sasuke points out, no, he's shrinking them. He's making them smaller with his special ability. Amado picks up the explanation and says, yes, the Sukuna Hikona, which was named in the last chapter, this is his ability to shrink things, and we get the full explanation of the scope of the ability here. It can shrink almost anything and restore it almost instantly too. The only exception is living things. He can shrink himself, but no other living thing. But otherwise, anything goes, even flames. So this explains a lot. This power, he can only pretty much use it on himself and then sort of inanimate objects. Otherwise, it would be incredibly overpowered if he could just shrink his opponents and immediately win like that. That is a good limitation to put on this ability, which is just very powerful by default. So that's very cool to see. But anyway, so he kind of points out, this is why we're choosing to strike now. So we see that he's shrinking the flames, they're shrinking, but all of a sudden he begins to kind of run out of energy for some reason. He drops to a knee, and they're like, this is the chance to strike. And they note here, the inner dialogue here is, Jigen's body has reached its limit. It won't last much longer. I'm reaching the dregs of his remaining chakra too. So he's already drained from the last battle, is basically what Amado says, that the battle against Naruto and Sasuke already had him low, and now Kashin Koji has pushed him so far. This is pushing the body, which we already knew from before is not ideal, to its limit. So it's impossible for him to continuously shrink this eternal natural fire. This is what's going to overcome him here. So he goes up in flames, he can't hold it back anymore, the body seemingly is just done, and basically the impression you get here is that, like, whoa, Jigen is dead. That this has to be the situation here. And Naruto's just like, that's a rather abrupt way to kill an Otsutsuki. You talked like there was going to be some crazy explanation, but he's just gone up in flames there. Is that it? But this is where the complexity of the Isshiki situation comes in, of, again, you have to remember that Boruto's situation is different than Jigen's situation. In Boruto's case, Momoshiki died, is dead. All Momoshiki is waiting for is for the karma mark to fully extract within Boruto's body, and then as soon as that happens, then Momoshiki can take over his body. With Jigen's case, Jigen has the karma mark, it's fully extracted. Isshiki can choose at any point in time to make that happen. The difference, though, is that Isshiki is actually still alive in his original form. Kaguya mortally wounded him, but did not kill him. Isshiki, we haven't seen die yet, because he just shrunk himself down, went in Jigen's ear, sort of replenished himself from Jigen's nutrients, and then sort of has been basically taking control of his body via basically puppetry from the inside from here on out. So the question here is like, what's going on here? What does it matter if the vessel dies? And then, most importantly, a small version of actual Isshiki is inside of Jigen. So that is clearly going to die. Isshiki is going to die here. What happens? Well, what is the actual process of a karma reincarnation? That's what we get here. But the explanation from Sasuke comes out here. He calls Naruto a dunce for not realizing this after all the explanation that they've got. He's got karma. As long as they have karma, the Otsutsuki don't die. They'll keep on resurrecting. Otsutsuki Isshiki, currently, he's got Jigen and Kawaki. 2 vessels implanted with karma. In short, he can come back to life twice. Isn't that right? Now tell us, how are you going to actually take him down, given that he has 2 more lives, basically? So Amado's like, yeah, that's correct. But Sasuke continues and says, you also mentioned earlier that if Isshiki were to reincarnate in Kawaki's body rather than the unsuitable Jigen, we wouldn't be able to stop him and it'd be the end of our world. But it doesn't make sense. If Jigen were to die, taking Isshiki with him, wouldn't Kawaki be the sole remaining vessel? We'd be playing right into Ishiki's hands. Isn't that right, Amado? So this is when everyone sort of turns against Amado again. It's just like, have you created a situation to give Jigen what he wants, to give Isshiki what he wants? So Kawaki rushes into the room. He tries to kill Amado with his sort of transforming his arm into the kind of spike tentacle type thing. But Sasuke, in a really cool move, just, basically uppercut with his sword, all of a sudden just slashes through it, saves Amado, and Kawaki's kind of out of action for the time being. So this is where Amado and I suppose Kawaki meet again, and they want to know, what are you plotting? And he just says, I don't appreciate the accusations. It's a simple misunderstanding because it's complicated. It certainly is. Let me finish explaining and you'll see what I mean. And he says, Jigen will likely burn to death in a few more minutes, along with Isshiki inside of him. When an Otsutsuki dies, the transfer into one's vessel begins automatically. Even Isshiki himself cannot control it. It's a strict karma rule. And though Jigen and Kawaki are both vessels of Ishiki's, Jigen's karma has had enough time to have completed extracting, so Jigen is fully ready to be used as Ishiki's vessel at any moment, whereas Kawaki has still not finished the process. Just like with Boruto, this is a crazy word that they put in here. His Otsutsuki vacation is in progress, but won't be done for some time. In short, he cannot be used as Ishiki's vessel yet. So that's an important one of like, okay, we pretty much knew the extraction wasn't done for Kawaki, but confirming it here of like, when Isshiki dies, he cannot choose to go into Kawaki's body and like wait for it to be done. If there is a completed vessel, he has to use it. So killing him now, before Kawaki has fully extracted, means he's forced to go into a vessel that he doesn't want. Because the whole point of Kawaki is that he's the perfect vessel, whereas Jigen is not a very good vessel. So if they can force him into a vessel that, as they said in the last chapter, Amado literally says the line that like, if he reincarnated into Jigen with the karma mark after full extraction, the body would probably die within a few days because he's so unsuited. So they're creating a situation where Jigen is forced into a situation where he's dead again within a few more days, even if this reincarnation goes through. And they set up that Kawaki's not done yet, but similarly, Boruto has a reaction to this as well, because in his case, Momoshiki is already dead. The second the extraction is complete for Boruto, he's going to be taken over by Momoshiki. The one difference with Boruto is that he has the Jogan. Now, they haven't brought that up in the manga yet, but everyone is thinking the Jogan has to be the new factor that comes into play that will stop the karma mark from fully doing what it's meant to do, and it will sort of counteract Momoshiki trying to take over his body. That's the only thing that makes sense of like a brand new ability we've never seen before directly counters what's going on with Momoshiki, and it will allow Boruto to use the power of the Jogan and potentially some of the Otsutsuki powers in one while still maintaining his own sort of form. At least that's the impression I get. So I think we're building up at this point to probably Amado is going to analyze Boruto and realize, and at some point we're going to get the reveal like, Boruto, you are going to turn into Momoshiki in like a year or like 6 months or something like that. He's going to be given this sort of like, you're dead in like a year type thing, unless we can figure something out, unless you can master the Jogan or do this thing. And I assume once this initial arc of this fighting all comes to an end, that's what we're going to be focusing on, is whatever happens with Kawaki to set up how he becomes, where he becomes in the flash forward in the first chapter of Boruto. And Boruto is going to have to deal with sort of the same thing on the opposite side. So Shikamaru confirms this. So you're saying if Jigen dies now and Kawaki can't be used yet, Isshiki won't be able to come back for a while, at least until Kawaki completes becoming a proper vessel. And this is where Boruto pipes up and is like, don't tell me, you're planning to kill Kawaki before that happens. And Amado's like, well, that is one option, but Naruto immediately steps up and is like, I'm not going to allow that. So he's like, calm down, let's watch what's about to happen here. Otsutsuki Isshiki is going to show his true form. So we cut back to the fight. Kashin Koji is watching the flames burning, and they're all like, how's this going to happen? Is he going to resurrect? Are you sure? And this is, Naruto points out, I thought his vessel Jigen is already dead, because, if it is just Isshiki inside of Jigen controlling his body, and yes, it's Jigen, this guy, but he is just a guy who happens to have Otsutsuki type powers being sort of channeled through him. But he's just gone up in flames. He's dead. Can he be used as a vessel? That's what they explain next. Amado says, yeah, he died. Medically, that is, but not as an Otsutsuki vessel. It doesn't matter if it's a corpse burnt to a crisp, as long as it's a body bearing a karma, it'll function sufficiently to be a vessel for reincarnation. So, this is why he says, Kawaki, I'm glad you're here. There's something I wanted to confirm with my own eyes. So, because Kawaki is linked to Isshiki, of course, he's going to witness something happening with Kawaki. We know the transfer is going to not come into Kawaki, but something's going to happen to Kawaki when Isshiki dies and the resurrection happens into Jigen. So, that's what we're setting up here. So, suddenly, throb is the sound effect on his arm with the karma mark. It bursts, like energy kind of envelops his whole body. The markings go all the way up his arm. They begin to go over his face. Everyone's kind of concerned, but Amado's just watching silently and is like, would you mind being quiet for a bit? I'm seeing this for the first time too. So just as you think like he's almost like about to explode or something like that, or the markings are just going to take over his whole body, they just vanish. They like evaporate off his body. Like they literally almost like peel off and just go off into the air and turn into nothing. And he collapses to the ground, of course, because I suppose this energy has just like left his body. So on the ground, Boruto looks at his arm where the karma mark should be and finds that it's not there. Kawaki does not have the little diamond that usually is always there that signifies you have the karma. It's this big reveal that Kawaki's karma mark is gone. And the reason this is such a big reveal is because, one, I don't think anyone predicted that this would happen, but that this was this sort of like locked in constant in a way of eventually something in the series has to happen to where Isshiki does get Kawaki as the vessel. Because that's what we saw in the first chapter of Boruto at the very start. The tease of the flash forward was Boruto and Kawaki using Karma Mark. So something has to happen as we go forward for Kawaki to get the Karma Mark again, and I suppose potentially to become the vessel once more. Now, that being said, I don't know if we know for sure necessarily that Kawaki in that moment is Isshiki, or if something like different happens and it is just Kawaki down a different path. Like, it opens the door for them to sort of surprise us, but it probably still is Isshiki. But it's worth thinking about and at least putting out some different speculation kind of paths, because this is quite shocking. Like, I was half expecting it just to be the end of the chapter when I saw the hand with no Karma Mark, but no, this is where finally there was actually a little bit more than I expected in the chapter. There's still a bit left. So after the shock of Kawaki's Karma Mark is gone, suddenly on the screen, the flames begin to die down. They get shrunk, and are gone, basically. And Kashin Koji notes, they were all shrunk in an instant. Such tremendous power. He's finally making an appearance. And we see the sort of shadow of Isshiki begin to walk out of the smoke. No flames anymore. And we just have to wait a few more pages for the reveal. Naruto asks for an explanation. What's happening right now? And he says, it appears that Ishiki's reincarnation is complete, using Jigen's body. Sasuke says, that's clear, but why did something weird happen to Kawaki's karma at the same time? It doesn't seem like a coincidence. How is it related to Ishiki's resurrection? And Amado explains, this is the big one. Of course it's not a coincidence. When an Otsutsuki reincarnates using a vessel, all other karma implanted in other vessels are simultaneously erased. Altogether, no matter how many vessels exist. This is a big reveal. That explains exactly what's happened here. Isshiki was forced to, as he was dying from the flames, forced to use what he had set up already, and use the bad vessel, the one that was done, which was Jigen. He has been reincarnated, but in doing that, he's basically reset the progress on all other vessels back to zero. And that's the whole point here of, like, this is how you kill an Otsutsuki. You force them to reincarnate into a situation when they only have one vessel. And when they're like that and they're vulnerable immediately after that reincarnation, everything else is reset. So as soon as they're new again, if you kill them again, you kill them. And that's how you kill an immortal, basically, in this case. So Amado attempts to give a bit of an explanation for why he thinks this is the case. I suspect it's some sort of safety feature to prevent the risk of creating duplicate copies of the same personality. It doesn't matter. The key is that right now, he no longer possesses even a single vessel for the purposes of reincarnating further. And this is when it is now actually possible to kill an Otsutsuki, an immortal Otsutsuki for good. So while it is ultimately a resurrection for Isshiki, and he's probably way more powerful now than he was before, we get that confirmation in the next couple of pages, he is also vulnerable. And I really like that idea. It feels a little bit like Avatar State from Avatar, of just the idea you're at your most powerful but also at your most vulnerable. That until he implants a karma in something else, he's not safe. And that's what's so cool about this. So we turn the page and we see the newly resurrected Isshiki, I suppose, in full form here. This is an Otsutsuki once more. It's not a human who sort of half looks like an Otsutsuki. It is one. So we see the most notable thing, of course, he has the typical patterns that we'd expect of an Otsutsuki. He's got the horns. But interestingly, his right eye has a sort of very interesting pattern that I don't think we've ever seen before. I don't think it's a Sharingan, so it might be some new ocular jutsu. I'm not sure what the specifics are on it. I'm guessing the other eye is a Byakugan, but it's very intriguing to see, like, okay, is his ability actually an ocular jutsu? Because that's what we sort of get here as we go forward. So Kashin Koji says, we finally meet Otsutsuki Isshiki. So suddenly he just looks at him, and this is where I think they confirm that the ability is sort of, I think, rooted, I suppose, in an ocular jutsu. He just looks over at one of the pillars, and it shrinks, and it forces Kashin Koji to have to like jump off it, and he starts doing this all over the place. He just shrinks loads of these pillars into nothingness, basically. He just immediately shrinks them. No activation, he just looks at them, and it just happens from a huge distance. And he eventually creates a situation where he forces the frog, one of the toads, which was the one creating the sort of the feed basically that they were all watching. It has to poof away because it gets hit by something. So everyone back in the sort of interrogation room can't see anymore. And Naruto's like, is Kashin Koji alright? Because of course he had suspicions. There's a connection, something there he was feeling about who this person was. And Amado explains, the plan was mostly fruitful. We were successful at dragging Isshiki out using Jigen. Koji has served his function. You mean he's not going to make it? That was never part of the plan. We wouldn't be jumping through such hoops if Isshiki were someone who could be so easily defeated. And Naruto just says, I'm not sure why, but I can't shake the feeling that he was fighting Isshiki like he really meant to take him down. And everyone's like, Naruto? What's this about? Like, why do you seem to care so much for this person you don't know? You did explain it to him straight, right? That this mission was a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Amado's like, what's your point? And why are you so bothered? And Naruto says, I don't know. I truly can't figure out why I'm so concerned about him. As we immediately cut back to Kashin Koji in the fight against the newly resurrected Isshiki Otsutsuki. He notes here, he's randomly shrinking everything he catches sight of. Is he planning to destroy this whole space? And all of a sudden, he looks at Kashin Koji. It's sort of a little bit unclear about what exactly is happening here. My guess, I think, is that he begins to shrink the mask that Koji is wearing, which forces it to sort of crack, but it also sort of crushes his head a little bit. And he says, Isshiki says, all genes, all people have a predestined fate. That man bore a mighty fate, a star of change. So the mask crumbles away to the ground, and he says, now I understand. Amado had wanted to cling to it, to that man's mighty fate. And we, of course, cut to a shot of Jiraiya, clearly. It's absolutely Jiraiya. And then we begin to gradually reveal the face of Kashin Koji here. There's blood on his forehead. To the minuscule possibility of change, Kashin Koji, clone of Jiraiya of the Great Three, that you shall die here was also predestined by your genes. So we see that it is a clone of Jiraiya. I suppose it's a slightly more kind of younger, differently styled version of Jiraiya, but still a clone of him. And that's the big reveal. Next chapter, July 20th, so a month away. And this is cool. Of like, okay, that explains, you know, why he was allowed in the Leaf Village and all that sort of stuff, why there was no real issue with it or anything like that. Great. How did this come about? Like, because of course, like, Jiraiya died when he went to confront Pain. He got the message out to Naruto. They decoded it and stuff like that, and Naruto was able to, you know, defeat Pain and so on. That's how the plot went. But Jiraiya, like, sunk after that. Like, where did Amado come in to get, like, Jiraiya's DNA? Now, you know, there has to be some sort of explanation on that side of things, of like the point that Ishiki's making here in the end of just like, Amado felt that by making a clone of someone who sort of affected such a great change in the world would help to act for the clone to actually also make a great change by being able to, I suppose, you know, defeat an immortal, like the destiny of the Otsutsuki to always survive, that this is how he would do it. So that's kind of interesting that, like, Amado was aware of, like, Jiraiya's life and the significance of him beyond just being a powerful shinobi. But there has to be a story here. Now, there's a lot of questions that come out immediately at the end of the chapter. The feed has gone off, so they can't see what's happening here. So this reveal has not happened to Naruto and everyone else. But there's clearly a next stage of the plan. This isn't just it, because if it plays out as expected here, and okay, Isshiki kills the clone of Jiraiya. Isshiki is then going to die within a few days because the vessel isn't good enough. Now, I suppose there is something is probably going to come into play here of like, the reason he can't implant the thing in Koji is because why would Amado send a new vessel basically that Isshiki could use out to fight him? So there's probably something in place that will stop Jiraiya here from becoming a new vessel, which I think leans probably more heavily into the idea that he is destined to die, that there's some sort of like self-destruct mechanism or whatever, or the ninja tools that are inside of him or whatever mean that can't happen. It's like anti-karma mark or something like that is going to have to come into play. But also, I think we are building to eventually Naruto finding this information out. And is this where Amado is going to be like, okay, the next stage of the plan, the clone has done what he needed to do, is for you two to now take on Isshiki and fight him. It doesn't feel like that's the full scope of everything that it is, because of course Naruto and Sasuke didn't really beat him the first time. How could they defeat him here? But that's clearly the plan. He's vulnerable in a way, but he's also more powerful. So what is the extra factor here? That's the only thing that like feels like I wish we had a sense of at the end of this chapter, is just what is the next stage of the plan? Does Jiraiya have some built-in thing, like I suppose almost like a self-destruct thing, like that will take them both out, and that will result in the end of the clone and Isshiki? That would seem like the way to go about it, but we're of course building to something bigger. This isn't just the end of the series. Something is going to happen. Some speculation would be that, like, what if everyone shows up to the battle? What if Naruto and Sasuke go, but like Kawaki and Boruto somehow follow, and we create this situation where Naruto, to defend the clone of his master Jiraiya, jumps in against Isshiki, and he's about to be killed until Kawaki kind of steps in front and protects Naruto, and that's when the karma implantation happens, and that's basically Isshiki has accomplished kind of everything he needs. He can die over the next few days, accepting that, you know, it's going to happen automatically now. That feels like it. That now that like original Isshiki has died, and now in this new body he's destined to die in the next few days, it would set it all up perfectly. That as soon as Kawaki the extraction has been completed, he's going to turn into him. That would be a pretty cool thing to do in terms of just like Kawaki making a sacrifice for other characters. It would allow Naruto to meet Jiraiya again, basically, here with this clone. We get the backstory, I suppose, to that. But is that everything that we need to do? It feels like we're building up probably over the next few chapters, because we're getting close to chapter 50, which I assume might be something kind of important, that they probably will want to introduce the Jogan, and maybe that's the way to chase off Isshiki. Of Boruto, after all this crazy stuff happens, goes some sort of combination of like karma mark plus Jogan crazy, and forces Isshiki to retreat, and it's this crazy confirmation of like, there's Kawaki's destiny of what's he going to become, but also there's hope for Boruto. But is that too quick? Is there something else that still has to happen? That's what I like. I really like what they've done here in terms of like, there are so many questions, but it's really good. It's not that they're not giving us any information, it's just the right amount of creating speculation because it is more of a complicated plot point. But definitely really, really like the chapter. You know, it is mainly an explanation in that like the action here is pretty like light here because we had the fight from before, but I think a lot of this works really well. I feel like we now have a very, very solid understanding of how karma works, and it feels like we're mainly done with everything that we need to. Probably, like I said earlier, about the only thing we still need will be some sort of like a time estimation on like, okay, so how long does it typically take for a full extraction of that data in someone's body to happen? And, you know, how long has it been for Boruto? How long does he have left before Momoshiki takes over? Because that's the other thing of like, you were so focused on the idea of that, like, if Isshiki gets into Kawaki's body, that we're done for. But the return of Momoshiki will be like just as bad, basically. Two Ototsukis is a huge threat. So like there's that in the background as well. And I think that's so cool. That again, I think deeper into the series, like, we still want to know what is the idea of the Otsutsuki. That like they're a clan from space. They're basically aliens. But what's their whole deal? Like, we of course get the idea that they plant the divine trees and stuff like that, and, you know, blah blah blah. But what is their like origin in a way? And that's what it feels like we're waiting for. Is it just all about power for them, or is there some sort of secret in the kind of higher ranks of the Otsutsuki clan? Because that, I think that's the most interesting thing about this, in a way, of like, we're quite heavily focused on Otsutsukis, but there's no mention right now about like the head of the clan. I think that there was one thing, it might have just been from the anime, where it was like, what was it, Urashiki, was it? Or maybe I'm completely misremembering this, but like Urashiki or something like that said something to Toneri on the moon about, like, you know, the head of the clan, or like the main branch of the family or something like that. And there's some slight teases and so on. So there's some very, very interesting stuff in the series going on right now. So I hope they can continue this as the chapters progress, because it feels like we're building towards sort of the end of like Boruto Part 1, and then we're probably into sort of like time skip type thing of like, training is going to have to be done. We're going to have to like address, like, there's a certain time period at which everything is going to go wrong if nothing can be done to stop it, and what is going to happen. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this Boruto chapter 47. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.